Join Paranormal M, where the strange and mysterious collide. Subscribe and turn on notifications to keep up with our latest eerie adventures. Get ready for a supernatural journey. Just a small, bittersweet thing that I've experienced. This isn't anything recent, but I've been struggling with the fact of death lately. It's causing me to have panic attacks, and this is the only thing that's been comforting me in the slightest. I had a cat named Callie. I loved them with all my heart and being. She was my baby, and she meant it, and she still means the world to me. I was living with the family at the time when she got sick. I tried to help her as much as I can, but I had very little money, and my family wouldn't help me. After 2 weeks, she couldn't fight anymore, and I held her, and she passed. I was devastated, and even now, a couple months later, I still grieve over her. After she passed, I could still hear her paw steps. They were trotting around and going up and down the stairs. I heard her muse and felt her jump up on the same corner of my bed that she preferred sleeping on. And once I thought I saw a small black figure go past a doorway. It was towards where her food bowl was. I know it was most likely my brain tricking me because of my grief. After about a week or two, though, I had a dream that stood out to me. I was in my room, laying in my bed in the position that I always find myself in when I wake up lying at my side. My legs are always curled up to my chest. And in the dream, I was woken up by something jumping on the corner of my bed, and I looked there, and there was this small, bluish-white glowing apparition. It was shaped like a cat. It was walking up to where I was laying. It's a little weird for me to describe because my vision was blurry. If I was just waking up for real, I had bright neon green lights that I kept on. I didn't feel comfortable being in complete darkness. They were almost in my direct line of sight, so that slightly messed with my vision too. I watched as the small figure came up and curled into the curve of my belly. I felt warm and soft and laid down to sleep. That was it. I woke up crying, and after that I didn't hear any more paw steps, mews, nor did I really see any more black figures racing to get a bite or kibble or something. My environment felt so empty and odd. Couldn't handle her lack of presence and moved out to live with my boyfriend. I had her cremated and she died, and that's when I got her back, and it felt like she was physically with me again. But after that dream, I haven't felt that presence again, nor have I really had any more dreams of her. Experience in a Motel 6 room. This happened about 4 or 5, 6 years ago in Fresno, California. 2 friends, M and F, or male and female, and I, a male, checked into a Motel 6 for the night. We had been going through, periods of homelessness on and off, sometimes with each other, sometimes not. So when we were all able to split the cost of the room, we were relieved to shower. Rest in peace. Around 12 to 1 a.m., my best friend, who wasn't with us, called me and asked if I wanted to go to the casino. He'd pick me up and throw me a 20 to play. I said, hell yeah, took a shower. I remember while showering, I noticed the top of the shower curtain, and it was moving. It was moving in an odd way, almost like it was being pulled hard in a direction, but wasn't anything too crazy. I just figured it was the bathroom fan or something like that. I got ready and said bye to the 2 friends staying with me and left him. Fast forward to when he dropped me off sometime around 7 or 8 a.m. I went to the room door and knocked. I forgot to grab one of the 2 keys and I left. But no one answered. I knocked again, but nothing. As I turned away from the door to figure out what to do next, I swear in my life I heard the female friend's voice saying, 1 minute. But also with a second voice saying the same thing, but in a deep, raspy voice. Imagine a normal and terrifying voice saying the same thing. Very unhuman-like. I remembered thinking, what the fuck was that? But just for a second, since I also heard my friend wasn't really, tripping yet, I scrolled through my phone waiting for 15 to 20 seconds. Then I knocked hard several times more, thinking, what the hell is taking them so long to answer the door? After another minute or two of waiting, I walked away confused as to where they went. I looked in the parking lot and saw my friend's car. That's where we came in. I walked closer and I noticed that they both were sitting inside. M in the driver's seat and F in the passenger. I got in and started saying, what the fuck have you got? And then F cuts me off, telling me that they wouldn't believe what happened that night after I left. Apparently, after I left, they were chilling watching TV with my mate friend seated at the table and my female friend on the bed with covers over her legs. All of a sudden, the covers moved as if someone was tucking her legs into the covers. She screamed and jumped off the bed, freaked out, while my other friend asked what happened. She told him, and while pointing at the bed, they both said that they both saw the indentation of somebody sitting down on the bed. As if it was really somebody sitting there. As they both started to freak out, and keep in mind, this is what they were telling me as I really wasn't there. Started to feel an intense feeling of dread and started crying uncontrollably. That's when they both noped the fuck out of there and got into the car where they spent the night. The whole time they were telling me that half that I'm crazy and half, yeah, right, as if I had previous encounters. But nothing that intense. Right after she finished her story, it dawned on me that I heard her, and some other devilish voice answering my knocking. I damn near shit my pants, which they both noticed, by the way. Well, I could see it on their face. I told them what happened just a few minutes ago, and we all sat in silence for a good while in disbelief. When we checked out, we counted down 1, 2, and 3. Quickly opened the room door, grabbed our stuff we came in with, flew out of there as fast as we could. That's my story. I do have to add that after this happened, I googled the address of the Motel 6. There's been a grisly double suicide sometime in the 80s or 90s. An older couple checked in, and I forget if it was a random motel or if it was the Motel 6 by then, but both got into a large container filled with some kind of acid and died in what I guessed was an extremely painful death. Voluntarily? Weird. I remember reading that the cleaning lady had to be hospitalized from the fumes from the opening of the door and standing at that doorway. Disembodied voice on Teams meeting. I managed a small team of 4 people. 3 of them were working in the office. The 4th was working from home. Let's call her Lisa. Good you named her. There was nobody else in the office, so we were the only people on site. We held a team meeting in the conference room, connected with Lisa on Microsoft Teams, so she was included. My laptop was plugged into the large TV monitor so I could share my screen and audio. Towards the end of the meeting, I asked if anybody had any questions. There was silence in the conference room and silence on Teams. Amidst the silence, we heard a faint voice say, "I don't understand." It sounded like a small child fussing. All eyes in the conference room darted around. Although it was clear the same sound came from the TV. Lisa has a 5-year-old daughter, so I laughed and said, "Hey Lisa, kids gonna join the meeting?" To her surprise, she goes, "She isn't home. She's at school." Stunned, all of us in the conference room exchanged glances. Lisa then says, "Wait, that voice didn't come from the conference room." I explained that the 4 of us were the only ones in the office, and that Lisa was the only one in the team session. We all agreed on a phrase that we heard, and it sounded like a young, cranky child. Lisa was home alone, and the rest of us were all alone in the office. No other device were connected to the TV, and nobody had any other device out during the meeting. There's no other programs open, and Lisa's laptop during the meeting wasn't there. We were all sober, alert, and oriented. Has anyone else experienced a disembodied voice on a web conference? Maybe hacking or signal interference is to blame. Either way, it was creepy as hell to hear in the middle of a workday. Check outside. Hearing 3 knocks under the bed every night at 9:44 for the past several months. For context, this is happening to one of my parents, not me. They live alone with no pets in a small single-family ranch in a sleepy suburban neighborhood. Every night at 9:44, they hear 3 loud and distinct knocks coming from under the bed. The cadence sounds exactly like a person knocking on the door. There's absolutely nothing under the bed or the mattress. They checked. They only hear this while in bed, and the bedroom is directly above the garage. There's also no security system or anything automated that would sound on a schedule like that. Thinking it might be the garage door opener or sensor, they tried waiting in the garage at 9:44 a few nights in a row to hear the knocking from there. They were met with silence. The following night, the 3 knocks resumed in the bedroom at 9:44. There was no plumbing or HVAC that runs between the garage ceiling and the bedroom floor, so these don't seem to be likely causes. Again, they live alone with no pets and only hear the knocking from under the bed, only at 9:44. If it were a critter stuck in the walls, it would be rather odd for it to produce 3 distinct knocks at the same time every night for months in a row. There's nothing in the garage that would produce the knocking sound. The 2 outdoor cameras don't show anyone outside the house. I thought maybe a frocker. Whoa, what is that? P-H-R-O-G-G-E-R. Frocker. I bought my dog a gangster necklace for Christmas, and he's shaking it. It's made of plastic. There's no one under the bed, no physical way to access the subfloor space between the garage and the bedroom. I haven't been to their house during the knocking events, but they're very freaking out. Our whole family's at a loss for a rational explanation. Can anyone please debunk this, or think of something rational that we haven't? If the cause is, in fact, paranormal, why do you think hearing 3 knocks at the same time every night would be, or what would it be? Not aware of any connection my parent would have to the number 944. There was one death in our family a few weeks ago, of an estranged, abusive relative that we despised. The knocks have sounded both before his death and since. If it was a death knock warning, why would it continue? My stepdad's house. It happened to her 9 years ago when she was moving to a different house. The house we lived in at the time had some paranormal activity, but nothing too extreme. Doors would open and close on their own. You would hear light footsteps walking up the stairs, light tapping at the window. The footsteps on the roof, too. Never really hear much, but my parents did. And keep in mind, the stairs are old and very creaky, so you'll definitely hear somebody going up or down the stairs. This will be an important detail later on in the story. However, on the last day there was, let's just say that's when some serious and scary shit had gone down. My mom had finished packing the rest of the stuff from the house and was bringing the rest, or rather the last of it, to her car. Hey, Gecko. My mom went back inside the house to make sure that she had got everything and didn't leave anything extra behind. My dad was inside and told my mom that he was going to grab the last few things from the garage. He'd be back inside in a few minutes. My dad leaves the house. My mom goes upstairs to make sure that she's got everything from the bedroom. As she's making her way to the kitchen, she hears someone coming up the stairs. The footsteps stop at the top of the stairs and a voice says out loud, "I don't think that's a good idea." My mom hears it and says that it was my dad's voice who said it. My mom replied to my dad and asked him, "What's not a good idea?" There was no response. Everything was dead quiet. My mom kept asking the same question and was annoyed that my dad wasn't answering her. She went to the stairs and saw nobody was there. My mom was confused and got a bit freaked out since she heard nobody go down the stairs and only go up the stairs. A moment later, she heard the front door open, then close. Saw my dad coming up the stairs. My mom asked my dad the same question, which, what isn't a good idea? My dad gave her a confused look. He asked her, "What are you talking about?" She explained to him what she had said she heard not too long ago. My dad told my mom that he was in the garage gathering the last of the stuff and loading it up in his truck before he came inside and checked on her. He also said that he never said anything about not being a good idea or anything like that. My mom instantly got chills and started to freak out a bit. It was then that both of them had seen the flickering of the lights from the chandelier, and that was from the parents' bedroom. Bathroom door then slammed shut. Chandelier began to swing violently back and forth. A few minutes later, there was a loud crash from my parents' room, and when they went to go check, it was the ceiling fan that was on the floor shattered into pieces. My mom then told my dad that we need to leave now and not come back. My mom gave my dad a terrified look as they quickly ran out the door, locked the place up, and sped out of there without ever really looking back. I'm stumbling all over myself. I personally believe that it was probably a skinwalker or a wendigo, since we did live on an Indian reservation at the time, and our house was located next to a massive forest. Has this happened to anyone else? I'm sure of it. I'm sure people have, and I'm finally talking about what happened back when I was around 11 or 12 years old. Currently, I'm 30. For some brief and relevant history of my life. My father was abusive to my mother, both verbally and physically, growing up. One night, they allowed me to spend the night at my friend's house. They lived directly across the street. I remember that night was very clear. I remember my friend, her brother, and I played charades. I remember their father was doing some renovations in the house. I was super jealous because they had a bedroom dedicated to just a jacuzzi. Bastards. I remember my friend eating pasta out of a mug, offering me some to eat. I denied. I remember we all gathered in the living room to watch a movie, which I don't recall. And this is when it happened. All of a sudden, I got an absolute urgent need to run across the street back to my home. We lived upstairs in an apartment duplex. There was no voice telling me this, but more of a deep need within me. It was just a matter of fact, like nothing else mattered. Now, as a kid, it was a big deal to impress this girl who I wanted to become friends with. Wanted to become friends so badly, not to mention I was having so much fun with her. And her brother. But I remember standing to my feet from her couch, just staring at her, and I said, "I gotta go." I remember the absolute confusion and disappointment on her face. I'm sure she asked why or something, I don't know. But I just remember saying over and over, "I gotta go, I'm sorry." Something along those lines. I remember running out of her house, sprinting across the street to my house, and it being well into the night. I busted through the front door of the house, ran up the stairs that led to our apartment, bursting through the door as well. Now that I Think about it, it was extremely unusual for both doors to be locked, as my father is extremely paranoid and always locked the doors. So, for both to be locked. As I entered into our apartment, I heard my mom crying and ran to my parents' bedroom to find my dad was assaulting her. And yes, the image burned into my brain and painful to talk about, but it is important. I'm not sure exactly what was happening, but I've never seen my mom so afraid. My father then left the room when he saw me standing in the doorway, ultimately leaving the house completely. I've tried to talk to my mom once, and that was when I got older. I wanted to tell her what happened to me during this time, but I couldn't, since it was hard for her to talk about, and never brought it up again. This night replays in my head once in a while, usually when I was alone with just when I was alone throughout the night. I was raised Christian, and I'd always attributed this to being that it was God telling me my mom was in danger. But I've been long stepped away from religion for some time now. I always struggled with this because why didn't this happen to other horrible things that happened in mine and loved ones' lives? This never happened to me before or after. It's the closest thing that I have to something unexplainable that, well, if anybody would like to hear any others, if they'd share something similar, or what they believe it is. This girl never talked to me again, by the way, all through middle and high school. I'm sure it freaked her out. Oh, I don't know. She thought I was definitely weird. Me and my friend saw a ghost for the first time. It felt so casual. I invited my two friends for a sleepover. That was because we had a project to finish. Our house had 2 floors, and we were staying at my room at the 2nd floor. In front of my room was just walls and a hallway. It was around 9 p.m., and my brother and my mom was watching TV in the living room below. My bed was positioned across the door, and me and my friend was just talking about ideas while sitting at the edge of the bed while our other friend was on her laptop. I usually always keep the front door open, unless I'm sleeping. So, as me and my friends were talking, I saw him looking at the door when I looked at what he was staring at. He saw this pale man-like figure peeking at us at the corner of the door with his hands near the light switch. He looked so normal. Felt like we were dazed for a solid 3 seconds, then we looked at each other and the figure disappeared. We were all confused, and I just thought my brother and my father just checked out on us. After that, I went downstairs immediately, asked if any of them went to check us out and if our dad already got home. My mom and brother said that they never went upstairs. My dad's running late because he's having dinner out with his company. After that, I immediately closed the door, told him that, we might have seen something else, started freaking out. We were just surprised on how casual the experience is. We were both experienced in having sleep paralysis, and we both thought the ghost would give that dreadful, hopeless feeling. It was creepy. Don't get me wrong, we couldn't believe how normal it felt like. Pennies found mysteriously stacked while alone at home. I should start by telling you that I'm, atheistic as they come. I still don't believe in ghosts or the supernatural, even though something startlingly peculiar happened to me half a year ago. My wife and son were away at my mother's for a week. I was alone in my apartment. I'd just gotten home after visiting the store, and I went ahead and took my e-cig out of my pocket, placed it on my dresser. About an hour later, I came back to take a puff, and I noticed something strange that made my heart jump. There were 3 pennies neatly stacked on the e-cig. Immediately, I started freaking out a little. I looked throughout the apartment for any signs of an intruder. All the while I was trying to make sense of what I witnessed, then I decided that the pennies must have come out of my pocket. Maybe they simply managed to fall on the e-cig in a stack. I tested my hypothesis by putting the e-cig in my pocket and then dumping a huge pile of coins in. I did this several times, but each time not a single coin stayed in the e-cig no matter how carefully I removed it from my pocket. Even more problematic, my dresser is about the same height as me. So, well, it would have been even more difficult to place the e-cig in the dresser with the stack of pennies intact. What makes it harder to believe is that I would have theoretically had the pennies at the bottom of my pocket, if at all, since I'd smoked in the car trip home. It really spooked me, and I'm really looking for answers here. I'm asking for advice on a plausible reason that if this occurred, and not necessarily anything paranormal, but if that's how it is. Has anybody heard of mysterious stacks of coins appearing? Dime appears on same area and floor multiple times within a few months. Wonder if this is the same guy. I was cleaning my son's room yesterday. Different. I was in the process of picking up the few remaining larger objects on the floor. That was before proceeding to vacuum. I noticed a dime was on the floor between the dresser and the Mickey Mouse table. I went ahead and picked it up and placed it in my pocket. I remember having a slight fear that it might fall out. I would end up vacuuming it up. So I just assured that I tucked it in beneath the phone. I began vacuuming and I noticed another dime reappearing in the same spot. I was shocked because there's no way I could have missed it, since I was checking on the floor rather meticulously. Suddenly a thought came to me. The thought came to check in my pocket for the previous dime, and lo and behold, that dime was nowhere to be found. This made me assume that the dime had somehow fallen out of my pocket and into the same spot. This time, I decided to place the dime on my amp, which I store in my room since he rarely goes in there. I continue to vacuum, and I hear a large thud. I look back in his new Space Jam picture, which I had temporarily just placed on his dresser. It had fallen. This was no shock, since it could have easily fallen on its own. I turn back to my vacuuming and I notice the dime back on the floor. I look at the amp and I see that there's no dime on top of it. This time I make sure to pick up the dime and place it in the other room on the chair in a coin jar. I told my wife about this strange occurrence and she thinks I'm crazy. It's because I've had a previous strange experience with pennies. I posted that here earlier. Ah, it is. Am I crazy? Is there some logical explanation for this? And here's an update. I found another dime around the same spot on the floor of the room. Odd thing is, there's no reason for that dime to appear, especially there. Nobody's used the room except my son. It was thoroughly cleaned. Somebody had to have brought it in, dropped it on the ground within the span of 24 hours. Put the dime on the amp again and asked whoever it was to, move it again. Waited all day and it didn't budge, so I put it away. Dark songs and messages waking me and my wife up at the same hour. Yesterday, my wife wakes me at 2:30 a.m. while freaking out. She woke up to her 9-year-old son, our nonverbal son, putting his face against hers. She then went back to sleep later and quickly woke up to a Mexican song all about life being pointless that's playing on repeat in her head, followed by a voice of "kill yourself" being heard. She was reasonably scared and wakes me up every time she gets freaked out. Understandably. So we stayed up a little bit and then went back to sleep together later. Tonight, the following day, I wake up at the same time, but I get a repeat of Britney Spears' "Hit Me Baby One More Time," only the last line of My Loneliness Is Killing Me for 5 straight minutes playing in my head in an almost outwardly audible fashion. I have had that happen to me before. Sorry for interrupting. I was a little scared at first, but just tried to go to sleep and ignore it. Then I heard the little trampoline springs next to the creek loudly as if somebody had gotten on it. I'm currently sitting alone and scared to sleep when I'm usually brushing these things off. And by the way, I've been sleeping on the couch recently because my kid recently has been trying to escape out of the door next to it in the middle of the night. We've bought locks and alarms, but I still don't feel safe without being there to protect him. I never listened to Britney Spears, so I was kind of shocked that song popped into my head. I also woke up extremely hot and sweaty, despite it being cold in the living room. As soon as I put on my sweater out of habit, my sweater cooled to my core instead of heating me. When I experience stuff like this, I usually get angry on purpose to talk out loud against the negative energy. I do this because, it's helped every time in the past against, falling into fear or weird occurrences. Anyway, I can't sleep and I'm having a tough time understanding this. My wife last night, when she experienced her situation, kept saying that a demon is here. She and I are both atheists. I tried my best to explain to her that this was all from stress and she had recently just heard the song in the car that day. She seemed to buy the explanation, so she was able to sleep soon after. Now, the same thing happens to me with a song that I haven't heard in ages. I've woken up with songs playing in my head, but they always go through the whole song in a continuous stretch. Having the song only play a single and very disturbing phrase is a little bit much. I don't believe in this stuff really, but it almost seems like I was being mocked, especially because I was out there alone, and hearing My Loneliness Is Killing Me, as if being alone would lead to something being able to easily kill me. I didn't interpret it as the original lyrics obviously meant for the 1 second. I interpreted it as if something was preying on me due to me currently being alone. Well, that's it. I'm sorry if it's a bit jumbled due to lack of sleep brain. I have too many comments about that. Not walking after midnight. I lived in a forested part of a coal mining town where my grandfather built a log cabin. As a teenager, I didn't sleep much for whatever reason. Because of that, I would go for walks at night. Nothing too strange ever happened, except an occasional whistling noise that I'd hear this during my walks. Not when I'm sitting on the deck or wandering the yard. I'm not sure if this is even related to the following event. One night I was talking with my grandfather in his office about that unfamiliar sound. He usually always had an answer, but not this time. We joked around about its possible origins, and then I said goodnight. My phone had been dead for a few hours at this point, but midway down the steps, it turned on and started playing Walking After Midnight by Patsy Cline. But only the I'm always walking after midnight searching for you part. The part before shutting off again. The phone's been dead for at least 2 hours at this point. That was not the last song I was listening to. I tried just turning it back on to see if maybe I was mistaken that it died, but it flashed me the dead battery symbol for a moment before going black again. Then my grandfather, whose office is only a few feet away from the steps, calls out another fun fact. Patsy Cline died in a plane crash on my birthday. Obviously, I didn't go on a walk that night, or at all until I got a dog. Paranormal. One day I woke up with an overwhelming feeling of dread, like something was off. I tried to ignore it, but once I got to school, the feeling got worse. My body was screaming that something is wrong, but can't quite figure out what. I carried on trying to ignore it, but once I got to the third period, something weird happened. I asked to go to the bathroom because, well, I had to go, and I had to calm down a little. The bathroom in that hallway is very small. Only 2 stalls, a small sink, a towel dispenser, and a trash can. Very small bathroom, only one of the 2 stalls were working, so I used that one. While I was sitting there in the stall, I heard footsteps. I didn't think too much of it, thinking somebody else had to use the bathroom too. But the footsteps stopped in front of the broken stall next to where I was. There's no shadow, and I couldn't see the person. But I never heard the footsteps leaving. Got out of the bathroom stall just a second after hearing them. I look around, but there's no one there. And like I said, it's a very, very small bathroom, with no time frame of where I would have heard these footsteps. Just didn't add up. I would have heard them leave or seen them leaving. I went back to class after washing my hands. The feeling of something being off or wrong worsened, but this time accompanied with the feeling of being watched. On my way through the halls, all the usual sounds were just drowned out or muffled. There was this odd threatening sound in my ears, like when a person in a horror movie is going insane or trying to collect their sanity, probably. Whispering Kids, Highway 20, Oregon. We were driving back from Las Vegas back to our hometown in Oregon, but we figured that we would stop in a bend at the end of the day, stay in a hotel, and finish our 16-hour-long drive back into town. I can tell you this, if you ever go through Highway 375,305,950.78 to Vegas or from Vegas. It can get eerie with spots that roadside assistance is not available, with nothing but sand and dirt mountains for miles and hours. Don't recommend it, but each their own. We made it about 11 and a half hours in. We passed Burns, Oregon. Relaxing music was playing while the snow was hitting the windshield with no visibility of what's on the side of the road. That's because it was about 9 p.m. and the night filled the sky. Somewhere between the Burns and the bend on the highway, off Highway 20. No cars were around, and I was already feeling something was off. Anxiety, maybe. As if I felt this, I heard kids talking behind the music I was playing. I just figured it was, it's just the music, but then my wife says, "Did you hear kids talking?" And that sent chills down my whole body. And I turned off the music completely. Me and my wife put our phones up to our ears to make sure no sound was coming from our devices. Everything was off, no sounds from them. Just the sounds of kids talking, out in the woods. No other cars around for miles. They sounded like a small child and an older child. I tried to entertain the idea of listening in on what they were trying to say, but the sounds of kids sounded like they were in the car with us. I wasn't giving my energy to this. My wife flipped the cosmetic mirror in the car, afraid to even look back. I turned the music loud, even though I could still hear them. It lasted about 3 minutes total. I prayed in my head for it to stop and to keep us safe. My wife, who's not much of a believer of this stuff, was genuinely afraid. It ended up stopping in a sigh of relief while chatting and processing what just happened. Talked about how no one will ever believe this. It was something that can't be explained. I wish I would have listened in more, but giving your energy to things unexplained can be dangerous. I'm grateful to have my wife who experienced this with me, so I don't feel like it was only me. Hearing her say, "Do you hear kids?" was the worst part. I knew it was for real. Scary moment, but fascinating. But if anybody has any stories on Highway 20, I'd love to hear them. Wish I could pinpoint the exact location, but between Burns and Bend by Glass Butte, or Butt. How do you pronounce that? And lastly, Oregon. Demon Portal. Years ago, when my kids were teenagers, they were friends with a Wiccan kid. He told them how his father experienced sleep paralysis every single night of his life, and how he, the kid, knew how to cast spells and such. Well, my kids had this Wiccan kid over and they played Bloody Mary. After that, my kids kept hearing knocking on their walls, inside the walls, the outer walls, inside closets. This seemed to happen as they were falling asleep or waking up. Around this time, they also created what they called a demon portal. I'm not sure if this kid taught them how to do it or they learned it online, but either way, they had a piece of paper with a bloody handprint on it and they put it inside the closet, the room where this knocking is, I guess. I think they were hoping to stop the knocking. I don't know. I have no idea that they were doing all this or any of it. I just heard about it later. My middle son told me that a few days after making this paper, he was playing the piano downstairs while playing all alone in the living room. A small scrap of paper fluttered down into his piano keys. It was a small, torn corner of a page. He stopped playing and looked at it and wondered where it could be from. Later, while looking in his closet, he saw that a corner of the paper was missing from his demon portal paper. He watched back at the piano. It fit exactly at the torn corner that was missing. He tore the page out of the closet, crumpled it, and threw it away. I found the crumpled up paper thrown out more in the trash in the outside bin and wondered what it was. I was super creeped out by it and left it there. I asked my kids about it and my son told me the story about it. Told them absolutely no more of that. No more of that's allowed ever. Good call. So I thought it was over, but it wasn't. I worked at home alone while my kids were at school. I started hearing noises like cabinets slamming or doors slamming while I was working. I would stop to check it out, but saw nothing except once my cat was hiding under the stairs. So I thought the cat was doing it. Once my sister drove by my house when we were at home, and she saw the lights in the home office turned off and on. She knew we weren't home, so she called and got a key from my mom and checked it out. No one was in my house. My kids were also gone on the weekends. They went with their dad. I started hearing noises at night inside the house, like chairs being moved around in the kitchen and the tile floors. I would go downstairs, but see nothing out of place. I just started locking the bedroom door at night, just in case. One weekend I heard all sorts of chairs moving downstairs. I had one of those country-style oak dining sets in my kitchen, but it sounded like chairs were being dragged through the house on the wood floors of the living room. And I was like, absolutely not. I'm not opening that door. No matter what sounds I heard from the sound of all the commotion, I thought for sure I was going to see some sort of poltergeist-style chair pyramid in my house in the morning. It was very difficult to sleep, but I still didn't open that bedroom door until daylight. My bedroom was at the top of the stairs, so when I opened my door in the morning, I saw one single kitchen chair facing the staircase at the bottom of the stairs. My kitchen was 2 rooms away. I could just feel the blood draining out of me at the sight of that chair. I mean, I was surprised that it was the one chair from the loud sounds, but it was verification that indeed something weird was going on. And that was a Sunday, and I was headed to church anyway. I went to church and asked for a blessing on my house that day. No more chairs moving after that. My children still reported the knocking inside the walls from time to time, though. Eventually, they grew up and one moved away, sold that house, and 2 months later told me that it was haunted. They sold it after a few years. The new owners after them had it a few years and are selling it now. I still hear an occasional knock behind my headboard or inside my walls. I live in another house now. For some reason, me and my kids all feel an urge to buy back that old house. Hopefully at a better price. Old Man Ghost. When I was 10 years old, me and my mom and 2 brothers moved house. After about 1 month, my older brother said that he woke up and seen an old man sat at the end of his bed. But he put it down to a dream. A few days later, my mom said that she felt somebody sit on her bed and other things would happen, such as things being moved and sounds of somebody walking upstairs. But we all just dismissed it. It was because we moved during the school summer holidays, started back at a new school, and I made friends quickly. 4 of which were girls, which we would talk a lot, and we asked loads of questions about my family. Told them that I never knew my dad because he left before I was born. So it was just me, my mom, and brothers. The 4 girls would come to my house almost every day after school, but they never entered my home. They would just knock and I'd go with them. This had been the normal routine for about 3 months until one day, my mom picked me up after school. She wanted to give me some new shoes. The girls didn't know that, so they went to my home, but nobody was in. The next day at school, none of the girls were talking to me, so at the end of the school day, I asked what was wrong. One of them said that they can't be friends with a liar. I asked, what have I lied about? And they said, you said that you didn't have a dad. And I said, I've not. They said, yes, you have. You were just embarrassed because he's an old man. Obviously, I didn't know what they were talking about, so I asked them what they were talking about. They said they went to my house like usual, knocked on the door, nobody answered, but the living room curtains were open. So they looked through the window and they could see into the kitchen. There's an old man in the kitchen washing the dishes. Told them that they must be winding me up and having a joke. They were adamant. After school, I told my mom that. She said, well, maybe it's true, because my brother said that he'd seen the old man too. She would later ask the neighbors about the previous tenant, and they all said it was an old man and he had died in the house. I told the girls, and they thought I was joking. I invited them round to witness the sounds and talk to my mom, and they apologized for calling me a liar. My first ghost encounter. I don't know why I didn't start with this. When I was about 7 or 8 years old, I lived near the woods called Lilford Woods. And me, my brothers, and my friends played there many times. We used to make rope swings from trees that were at the side of the World War II bomb crater, but one day, me and my older brother and my best friend at the time, we were there as usual on one weekend. This particular day, we could hear flute music playing. It seemed to be coming from all around us. We searched all over to find the source, but we gave up when it eventually stopped and we decided to head home. It was close for us to be home for tea, so we started to head for home, and then the music started again. But again, we couldn't determine its source. We made it to the edge of the woods and had to climb a small fence that opened up to a large field. And in the middle of that field, we could see a man sat cross-legged, playing the flute. We approached him and told him that we could hear him from miles away. From my first impression, he looked out of place. His clothes didn't match the era, which at the time was the late 80s. He looked like he was from the 60s or 70s. His clothes didn't really look like anything you would see anybody wearing at that time. I asked him if he could play any other instruments. He said he could play the guitar, and asked him if he could play any songs that we knew. It was like George Michael, but he said he'd never heard of him. We asked other questions, but my older brother said that it was pretty much time for us to go home now. We all started running across the field, which led to the tree line, which we had to go through that led to the dirt road. It took us no more than 30 seconds to get there. Then, as we're running down the dirt road, I could hear the flute playing again. And as we're still running, we look to our left, being towards where the man was, and we can see him running parallel to us in the field, but through the tree line. Then, as we're still running, we look away from him to look forward in the milliseconds, and just like 100 meters away, we saw him jumping down a sewer, like a sewage manhole, as they say it. It took us about 20 seconds to reach it. When we got there was no cover over the manhole. All we could see was rushing water, but the hole seemed too small for a man to fit through. We all thought it was weird, but at the time we were young and naive. Thought older people were stronger and faster and could do things that kids couldn't. The following Monday, we went to school. We were telling kids about what we had witnessed, and the lunch lady overheard us and asked us to describe him. She asked us if we had made the story up, basically. We said no. She told us that he fits the description of a 23-year-old man that had committed suicide in the woods in the 70s. He had hanged himself from one of the trees. And when I think back, I remember his neck looked very red and sore. Never heard or saw anything again, but I'm 43. As his friend and older brother is 45. We all remember it the same. My older brother's the type that believes, in fact, in figures that you can see, and he explains it as being supernatural. You could see it. The Upstairs Ghost. When I was 14, me and my two brothers and Mom moved homes. It was a council house in my hometown of Leigh, Greater Manchester. It took us about 1 month to decorate and get settled in, when we all started hearing noises coming from upstairs. Sounded like footsteps and switches being turned on and off. All the time we had 3 cats. They were all very hesitant to go upstairs. When we could hear the noises, the cats would look up and follow the sound, and if we picked up any of the cats and take them upstairs, they would struggle with us, make it clear that they didn't want to go up there. After several months of living there, the noises would get more often, and then one night my mom said she was in bed reading and she fell on one side of her bed and dipped down. Said it felt like something was sitting on the side of her. After being there for 4 years, we're all pretty used to it, and the noises seemed to settle down. Even the cats would venture upstairs. One of them would even sleep in the bed with me and my brothers. I shared a room with my younger brother. When I turned 18, my older brother had moved out. My mom got a job managing a pub. She moved into a flat above it, so it was just me, my younger brother, and cats living there now. I quickly moved into my older brother's room, and it was my first time having my own room. I quickly made it my own, and my younger brother used an extra space in his room to get a weightlifting bench. He didn't use it much, and he would hang his clothes and hangers in the bar. This played a part in what happened next. One night, I had gone to bed as normal. It was 10 p.m. I quickly fell asleep. After a few hours, I was woken up by a loud sound from my brother's room. I quickly jumped out of bed and opened my brother's door. The cat came running out, and my brother had clearly woken up as well. I immediately noticed that the clothes my brother had hung on his barbell were swaying back and forth. The sound that woke us up was the bar that had 60 kilograms on it, plus the clothes that had been picked up and dropped back down. We were both a bit freaked out, but that was the loudest thing that we'd heard from that house. But nothing like that happened again until a time when my younger brother had gone to Spain. That was with me and with my mom. I was on my own in the house, but I'd booked a trip with friends to Ibiza. The night before our flight, I asked one of my friends to stay at my house. That was because he was a heavy sleeper and was difficult to wake up, and we didn't want him to be late for the flight. He came to my house around maybe 4. I'd already told him that he might hear the footsteps upstairs, but I didn't think he'd believe me. As it was summer, it was a very warm day, so I had the back door open to let some breeze in. We were both sat in the living room, and then, the footsteps started. My friend knew that there was only us in the house because anybody else would have to walk past us to go upstairs. Then the footsteps got louder, a lot more than usual. Then all of a sudden it sounded like a very large person running down the stairs. We both ran out of the house before whatever it was reached the bottom step. My friend refused to go back in, and I reluctantly went back in to get my passport and luggage, and to feed the cats, leave them some water because my older brother would come the next day to feed them until my younger brother came back. Nothing much happened after that. I speculate that whatever it was using me or my brother's presence and didn't like new people in the house. About 2 years later, we moved out of the house, and a new tenant moved in about 6 months later. The new tenant went with my mom's pub and asked if we experienced any strange things in the house. My mom told him the truth, but told him that it was harmless, and they'll get used to it. If you made it to the end, thank you. Sorry if it was long-winded. My afternoon of terror. This story takes place about 3 months ago. Back in August, I was a 13-year-old male. I was chilling with my brother. We were home alone because our mom was at work. So we were on the couch watching YouTube when my brother's girlfriend texts him, "Hey, you want to come over?" So of course my brother says he wants to, and he goes to grab his bike to go to her house. Right before he leaves, he tells me, "Be safe, don't break anything, and don't scream that I hate you when you do that." So I agreed with his rules, and then he went out. I knew I was going to be home alone for a while, because my mom didn't get back for another hour or so. Called my friend asking him if he wanted to hop on, and we hopped on Fortnite. But as we were playing, I took off my headset because I heard a voice. Then the voice went again. It sounded like my sister. I went to go say hi and see how her day was. But when I opened my door, nobody was there, but my dogs were looking at the spot where the voice came from. So I shrugged it off because our house is old, so I blamed it on that. Like 20 minutes go by, and then I hear it again. But this time it's my mom. I was confused because she wasn't supposed to be home for another 40 minutes. I just thought, well, maybe she got off work early, like she usually does. I went again out of my room to say hi and see how her day was. But again, no one was there. The dogs were staring at the same spot, but this time they were whimpering too. I was a little bit weirded out, but I just shrugged it off and blamed it on the old house again. Another 30 minutes go by, and this time I hear my brother. I was really confused. He was supposed to be at his girlfriend's house. He usually stays at her house for at least a couple of hours. But I didn't really think much of it until I went to go say hi. He wasn't there. Now I was really scared because all 3 of my family members' voices I heard, and yet none of them are here. I started crying because I was scared, and I called my brother to tell him what happened. While I was on the phone with him, I heard a little boy laughing and stomping his feet. I turned around to hear the noises coming from my little sister's room. I opened the door, and the noises stop. Everything goes quiet. I tell my brother what had just happened. He told me to go outside and wait for her mom. She was going to be there in like 10 minutes. I wait outside for my mom, and I tell her what happened. We checked the house, and everything was the same. To this day, I still don't know what those noises were, and I do still hear them from time to time. But my mom just tells me it's in my head. I know what I heard, though, and I'm coming on here to try to see if anybody really knows what they were. On my way home. So let me tell you what happened the other night. I was just walking down the street, the usual evening stroll. It was chilly, but nothing too bad. The sky was overcast, and everything felt a little bit quiet. almost like the whole world was holding its breath. I made my way to the bus stop, and as I got closer, I saw this guy sitting there. He was older, dressed in a long coat, his face partly covered by the brim of his hat. At first, I thought he was just another passerby, but as I got closer, he kind of nodded at me like he was expecting me. So I sat down next to him. I mean, the bus wasn't there yet, and I figured a little company wouldn't hurt. I said, "Evening." He responded just a simple, "Evening." But his voice was kind of, well, almost like it wasn't, or rather, he wasn't really there. He didn't look at me directly, and his eyes were sort of staring past me, like he was lost in thought. Didn't think much of it at first, but just small talk, you know. I asked if he was from around here, and he said, "Been here longer than I care to remember." Thought that was a bit weird, but okay. The more we talked, the more I felt off. Like something wasn't right, but I couldn't put my finger on it. And here's the crazy part. Every time he spoke, I started feeling this intense cold, like a chill running straight through me. It was like the temperature dropped all of a sudden. I mean, it wasn't even that cold out, but the closer he got to me, the colder I felt. I tried wrapping my arms around myself, but it didn't help. I started shivering. He was just sitting there completely calm, like nothing was wrong. My breath was visible, like it was freezing cold, but I knew it wasn't that cold outside. It was just him. At one point, he said something that sent a shiver down my spine. He just casually muttered, 1527. Like it was nothing important. Didn't make any sense, but for some reason it stuck with me. I didn't think much of it at the time. Maybe it was just a random number, but it felt off, like it meant something. Anyway, the bus finally showed up. I thought, great, I can get away from this weird vibe. I stood up to go catch it, but when I turned back to look at the bench, the guy was gone, just gone. There's no sign of him, no rustling of clothing, no movement, nothing. It's like he disappeared into thin air. So I walked up to the bus driver. I asked, "You saw that guy sitting there, right?" The driver looked at me like I was crazy and said, "What guy? You're the only one here." I swear I wasn't imagining it. I looked at the bench again and it was totally empty. I don't know if I was just seeing things or if something really strange happened last night, but it felt like that guy wasn't supposed to be there. It's just too weird. The cold stayed with me long after I got on the bus. I don't know what to think about it, but I haven't been back to that bus stop since, and every time I think about those numbers, 1527, it gives me a chill all over again. Girl's voice telling to stop it. I was hoping for a bit of advice, or to try to get some answers. I've had a couple of experiences that I'm unable to explain. I'll start with the first incident when I was around 11 years old and my brother was 14. We lived in a new-built house in Wales. Very normal-looking house. Definitely did not feel or look haunted. We found a couple of strange things in the back garden when we were younger, such as old bottles and a pair of broken sunglasses. Not sure if it's related or not, but thought I'd mention it. One of the first strange things that happened was my mom called us downstairs. For some reason, there was a glass of milk. It was on the kitchen table. It was full to the brim, like it was so full if you moved it, it would spill. My brother and I had no ideas, none of us did it. We went to the living room for something, and we came back to the glass of milk being empty. Weird, but didn't think much of it. Fast forward a couple of weeks later, me and my brother were playing the Sims game on the computer. It was only me and him in the house as my mother was working late. We were creating a new sim when all of a sudden something came between me and my brother's ears and said, "Stop it!" It was the creepiest thing I've ever heard in my life, and still to this day I can hear it. It was really unnatural. I could almost feel the breath. It freaked us both out. Both turned, looked at each other, and said, "Did you hear that?" We both jumped out of our seats and ran to the other room. Called her mother, told her that she could just chalk it up to her imagination, but whatever happens to us was real and definitely happened. I've done a bit of research on it, and I found that ghosts do sometimes whisper stuff in your ears. Freaky stuff. Fast forward to a few years later. Nothing paranormal after the milk and whispering ghost girl thing incident. But then there was one night when I was in bed. I had a TV in the bedroom, and the streetlights from outside, they were sort of making this, it was reflecting stuff. I could see this stuff in my hallway. It was around 3 a.m. when I randomly woke up. I saw what looked like a woman in like a white nightgown walk into my bathroom and the door shut behind them. Freaked me right out. I said to myself, it was probably my brother. He had a white, dressing gown. I decided to get up and have a look. I knocked on the door expecting my brother to reply, but there was no answer. So I opened the door. There's nobody in there. It scared the shit out of me, so I ran back to bed, pulled the sheets over my head, and then ended up falling asleep. I told my mom and brother about it, but they both said I must have been dreaming. Weird. Other than those incidents, nothing really else happened until now. So, fast forward to today. I'm now 28. I completely forgot about the whispering ghost girl until my brother brought it up to me a couple of weeks ago. Once I started to remember it, some strange shit started happening. Now, this only happens when I'm in work, and never in my flat or anywhere else. But basically, I'm sitting like the work canteen having my lunch, and in the corner of my eye, I saw what looked like a man. They were in an orange hoodie with his hood up and blue jeans. When I turned, it disappears. It doesn't happen every day, but happens a lot. Always the same orange hoodie and blue jeans. Now, where I work is right next to Cardiff Central train station. Not sure if that's linked at all, maybe a death on the railway or something. But I'm still seeing this orange hoodie man to this day. Just want to know what people think. Never seen their face as their head's down and the hood's up. I'm more open to paranormal things or spirits because of what happened when I was younger, or am I just going crazy? The boy at the bottom of the stairs. So my Auntie Linda is a very straight-talking woman. She never believed in ghosts or the paranormal until she experienced something. So this encounter was about 20 years ago. My Auntie Linda was working at a care home in Wales. Now, the care home is really old, and it's been a few different buildings in the past. The building is over 100 years old. So my Auntie Linda was doing the night shift, so she started work at around 6 p.m., and then she would finish the next day at around 9 a.m. She was doing her rounds and checking on the residents and they were asleep. All seemed fine. She went upstairs to the staff room to get ready to go to sleep. She was locking the staff room toilets upstairs before she went to bed. Now, the staff toilets are directly opposite the stairs. So when she locked them, she turned around facing the stairs and she noticed what looked like a little boy sitting at the bottom of the stairs. He was wearing old-fashioned clothing, maybe something from the 1920s. He was facing away from her. Startled, she called out to ask if he was okay. All of a sudden, the boy turned to face her. Now, her description still freaks me out to this day. She said when he turned to look at her, it looked like his jaw or something was broken, because his jaw was hanging from his mouth. He gave her direct eye contact, and now you know kids run up the stairs sometimes using both their hands and feet. This kid started to run towards my auntie up the stairs. She screamed in terror, and as soon as she screamed, the boy disappeared. My auntie then ran out of the building and called her manager to say that she's not staying the night. When the manager asked what happened, she said she saw something at the bottom of the stairs, and they ran toward her. Her manager then said, "Oh, you've seen Benny." Turns out, the little boy was a boy called Benny who had died from falling down the stairs in the building years ago. Some of the residents at the care home said he visits them sometimes and sits on their beds. Honestly, scared the shit right out of me as a child. And my auntie to this day swears that what she saw really happened. From that point onward, she didn't really dismiss the paranormal anymore.